Well, welcome everyone. Here we are once again with another episode of Everything and Nothing. And like I said on the last episode, remember, Everything and Nothing is really a place for conversations. And I did promise at the very beginning that from time to time, so that you won't get bored with my voice, although I know it's a beautiful one, I will bring people that would want to have a conversation so that we can hear different perspectives or similarities or differences, whatever it is. And this time around, I was introduced to someone and we had a conversation and we were like, dude, that's like similar views that we have on here. So I said, hey, did you want to be part of a conversation so we can share these perspectives? And here we are. So with me today, I have Luki. I won't say your last name because I'm sure I'll butcher it. I don't feel bad about it because most people butcher my name. So it's a fair game. But what I'll do is, Luki, I'll let you introduce yourself. So tell us your full name, what you do in the world, and what are you up to right now?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for having me on the show and having this conversation. So I'm Luki Danukarjanto, and the fun fact, it's actually a made-up last name, where when my dad was born, he was actually, well, if you can see on video, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm ancestrally Chinese. So I'm part of the Tan lineage. And my dad was born a Tan, and due to some civil unrest in the country, you either change your last name or else. And my dad didn't like or else. So he chose Danukarjanto, which means resourceful worker in Indonesian, right? So, and if you find any other Danukarjantos out there, they're probably related. So I'm Luki, and I call myself the soft skills guy. And I like to say that I found my purpose helping others find theirs. So day to day, I help young professionals who are kind of living their 5 or 6 out of 10 life. They have the expectation of becoming like a doctor, engineer, accountant, lawyer, and either they ended up there and realize, like, is this it? Do I just keep doing this for the rest of my life? Or they realize that's not for me, and I don't know what to do otherwise. And I'm really focused on, well, I mentioned the soft skills guy, but I like to call them human skills because I don't think they're soft. I think they're necessary for any human to have. So I will do like one-on-one coaching, group coaching. I'll do seminars and workshops, and you'll often see me teaching in various institutes around the city of Toronto. So whether it be some of the universities or colleges or some of the upskilling programs. And sometimes I'll take jobs as recruiting or talent development. And I have a podcast of my own, a YouTube channel of my own, and all of those are from humble beginnings of someone who used to be a very shy, introverted computer scientist who would sit in the corner and not really talk to a lot of folks. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I guess what's keeping me busy these days is I actually have got on the AI train and have started vibe coding with my new CareerBuddy app, which is a career buddy or a mentor in your pocket, a career coach in your pocket, a Luki in your pocket, who can help you with navigating the journey of jobs, careers, and life. Right. So that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. Well, that's a big nutshell. And the reason I say that is because I was like, some of you that are listening now, you know why we are like, yeah, we would be good having a conversation because, yeah, soft skills. I mean, what is soft, right? I mean, then we get into a whole topic of language. But when I was introduced to, or when I was introducing myself to Luki, and we were talking about that, and, you know, when you said, I called them human skills, I was like, yeah, I mean, I literally wrote a book about the human side of innovation because people are always like, we need to get this done. And they just focus on the skill, they just focus on the result, and they forget that we are engaging, we're talking to human beings. And the other thing that you just said here toward the end, when you were like, you started doing this because you were into computer science and an introvert. And we literally, before we started recording this, I was telling Luki that the reason I have this space of everything and nothing is to remind people that just because we have a tendency of having a preferred style of something doesn't mean that's all we are. So for example, if we say, well, you know, I prefer to be more introverted, and even that has different definitions, right? Some people think that being introverted is like, I don't like to talk to anyone. I just like to be on my own. Other people define it as an introvert is someone that recharges or refuels himself, herself by being on their own, as opposed to an extrovert is someone that recharges their batteries by being around people. And some people say like, oh, you must be an extrovert. Because I love talking to people. I love being out there. I'm pretty loud. I'm pretty like, let's do this. If I go to a party and I feel comfortable, I'm the life of the party. But if I go to a party and I'm comfortable and I'm completely exhausted, I'm the one that will go sit at a corner because that's how I recharge my batteries. So anyway, that's an example of what we talked about earlier, you know, those human skills and that awareness. But now I'm curious, how do you define an introvert? What invited you to say I'm an introvert?
Well, I like your definition about how folks get their energy, right? So I actually say it's you recharge when you're on your own or sometimes in a small group of people. Because I do find myself on my own, I'm great, I'm fine. With one person, same, right? Two people, it's okay. Three is kind of like when it gets to like 4 or 5, then it's someone else takes the reins and I'll just kind of sit and add my 2 cents, that sort of thing, right? So I would prefer a smaller group of people. But as you mentioned about the adaptation and getting used to it, I've built my, call it extrovert reserves, so that I can be in a group of 10, 50, 100 people and perform. Because really at that point, I'm almost like an actor, a performer. But at some point in time, those batteries will run out. And then just like you, I'll probably have to sit in the corner, recharge. Usually it's in the car ride home, right, after an event. And I'll be able to gain my energy. The analogy that I like is, I don't know if you've heard the one about the coin pouch, where as an introvert, you start your day with a pouch full of coins. And every time you meet someone, you give a coin away. And by the end of the day, if you didn't meet anyone, you're rich, right? But if you met a lot of people, then you're poor, right? Now, the extrovert is the opposite, where when you wake up, your coin pouch is empty. And every time you meet someone, you get a coin, right? So if you meet a lot of people, you're rich. But if you don't meet a lot of people, then you're poor, right? So I like that sort of analogy in there. But as you said, it's really just a preference and style, right? Where sure, I would prefer to be on my own, but I don't necessarily want to be on my own all the time. Right? A little bit of variety is good. And once in a while, if I do an event, then I will want to recharge. And I actually, before from a productivity time management, I would actually color code my calendar as a red and green, where red are those times when I know I'm going to have to be on and with a lot of people talking in a meeting, in a conference or something, networking and all that sort of stuff. But afterwards, I would have to put a block of green, which is time with myself, maybe one other person at most, so that I could recharge. Because if there are too many blocks of red, then at the end of the day, I'm, as you said, like exhausted. I just want to pass out. So that's the definition that I use.
I love it. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to apply that. Thank you for sharing that. So another thing that I wanted to pinpoint before we continue was your name. I love it. I find it very fascinating how you share that at the beginning, because we are talking about soft skills. So let's just scratch that out. And from here on, we'll call it human skills. And the reason why that's important is when you share that, it creates already a connection, human to human.
Mm-hmm.
You're sharing something so short and brief, but it gives so much richness to your story, to your origin, to who you choose to identify as or work with.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful, I feel.
Yep.
It's like when I run sessions, you know, because I do a lot of innovation, that's the whole focus. And people know when they listen to me, innovation for me is not new, shiny. Innovation is creativity, and creativity is creation. So in order for the people in the room to be creators, I need them to come out and remember who they are. And one of the first exercises we do is an introduction of our name and a hobby. And I got this from I think about 10 years ago, one of the team. I always like to give credit where I get this from, so that it's not like, oh, this came from me. Nothing really comes from us. It's all a flow of exchange and collaborations, like even right now, what you just did. But it came from someone that I used to work with. And it's sharing the name and a hobby. And I love it because it humanizes the group. I tend to get rid of name and title because I used to have C-suites, the chief of accounting and chief of finance and chief of this and chief of that and chief of that. And I would tell them I'm not meaning to be disrespectful by saying, I don't really need to know your title. What I want to know is, who are you? Like, what matters to you? Mm-hmm. And I would celebrate them before and say, congrats for all your achievements and how far you've come. That's amazing. But what I noticed is when we go to the level of humanity, we work better.
Yeah.
We show up better. We do better. So I wanted to really like pinpoint how that story, and maybe you've heard this before, but for me in this moment, like hearing your story and how interesting that it caught my attention about your last name, where I was like, I don't want to like butcher it, tell us. And then you went and shared that. Like, how fascinating is that? Yeah, I just wanted to pinpoint that and acknowledge that. Now, what you do, you work with people, especially people that are about to, younger people that are about to go and make that commitment. And like you said, decide what they're going to do with their lives and then be like, oh, wait, is this really it? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to hear your perspective or your point of view on why is it important to have clarity on the human skills before making those big commitments?
Yeah, I mean, very loaded question with a lot that we could get into. But the folks that I tend to work with are those that, early on in life, a lot of our decisions are chosen for us, right? Mom and dad tells us to go to school, get good grades, go to university, get one of those careers, the doctor, engineer, accountant, lawyer. And just speaking as a side on the topic of name, so I shared the story on my last name, but there's a little bit of a story in my first name too, where I was named Luki, mainly after Luke, who is the patron saint of doctors, because my parents had imagined me kind of going down that route. And then in Indonesian, where I'm ancestrally from, where I was born, a lucky is a name for a boy. So lucky is boy. They didn't want to call me Lucky because it sounded kind of like a dog. Right? So they took Lucky, they took Luke, and then smushed it into Luki. So that's kind of how that happened. But anyway, so I had the expectation, not necessarily the pressure put on my parents, but to have kind of one of those traditional doctor, engineer, accountant, lawyer type of things, right? And when young people are going through their careers, they're kind of handed one of those. Or, okay, I wanted to go into tech because my dad worked at IBM. I wanted to code video games when I was a kid. So that just made sense. I had no idea what it took to code a video game or what a career in tech would be like. But it had a great notion. So I was kind of going through the motions. I call it like the conveyor belt of life, right? You go through high school and then thump, you get a degree. You go through university and thump, you get a degree. And then you get a job and get promoted, thump. and then next step. But when is it at any point in time, do you actually take a look at what you want? Have what you said, like the clarity of what you want versus, well, this is just what mom and dad wanted for me. This is just what my culture wants for me. This is just what society wants for me versus going back to like, is this what I want, right? So I had a conversation with a young professional earlier where they were in that same boat, right? So they wanted to build things or they were in tech, but they really gravitated towards like being a mechanic. Working with their hands and building stuff, right? But that's not like a suitable career path because it's like the trades. It's you have to work with your hands. You have to get dirty. You're not like in an office and making $1 bajillion, whatever. But if he stepped back and had the clarity to say, okay, this might be not the traditional path, but how could I turn this into something that is for me, right? So going back to that clarity, like it's often taken away from us, like the schooling system where you're just sit there, do as you're told, right? Do exactly what the person beside you is and everybody else is doing, right? So you become a cookie cutter versus having that clarity of like, what is it that I want? What is that path that is right for me as a person, as an individual, versus as like a cog in the wheel. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but to me, that's one of the things that we don't have enough opportunity to take some time to actually understand what it is that we want. And not to say that as a 12-year-old, 16-year-old, we would be able to really make that commitment. But that's kind of the expectation, is like, when you're so young, how do you know what you want to be, and how can you even make that commitment versus having the toolkit of a human given those soft skills and figure it out along the way. Because that's the other aspect where people often don't realize that even if I take a degree in the sciences, in the business world, in whatever, that doesn't commit me for life, right? I can always switch in a couple of years and do something a little bit different. So I have the freedom to navigate. But often folks pigeonhole themselves into doing whatever they want. So I'm not sure what your thoughts or comments are.
No, I agree with you. So yeah, this is why I love having these conversations, because for me, this isn't like an interview and blah blah. This is more like a conversation where we share perspectives. And yes, to your point, I was like, oh, it's like he's talking to me. There was like my 21-year-old going, somebody actually knows what I went through, because I share this in the, when I speak, when I facilitate, and it's also part of the book, my story of when I was 21, I got married because that was expected. That's what I thought was expected of me. I come from Mexico at the time. This was years ago. It was still expected that you get married young and you start a family young, and that's what you do. And I wanted that. I wanted that so badly. Although I was growing up in the US, I was like, well, I also want a career and blah, blah, blah. So when I was a child, I used to walk around with a baby doll, and I used to play that I owned a bridal shop. That's what it was, a bridal shop. And that I was also the manager of a bank.
Okay.
So that's what I envisioned. Hence probably the name of my show, like everything and nothing. I wanted everything, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, at that young age, what you just said, we tend to be in situations where we want to follow what is expected, to do the quote unquote right thing.
Right.
And this links to, before we started recording, you and I were talking about, this perspective that I have of there is no life-work balance. There's life and there's areas in our life. Because as you, life coaching, I also do. And we talk about this with our clients, right? And how I link that to what you just said is, yeah, at 16, 17, 18, you may not know what you want to do forever. None of us really do.
Yeah.
However, if we have the right support to have clarity and a good foundation on who we are, what matters to us, then it'll make it easier to make those decisions, so that whether you want to be a mechanic or a computer scientist or a broker or a baker, you're doing those things based on the human skills, the things that you're passionate about, the things that drive you, the things that really feed the soul or the spirit, whichever one we want to call it. Some people have different words for it.
Yep.
And that's how I see it, right? Like, yeah, it's a big commitment at 16, 17. Although I have to say, at 15, I knew I wanted to work for an international company because I wanted to travel the world, and I didn't want to pay for it. So I decided at 15, I'm going to study international business. And I did. That's my degree. But some of us don't have the words or the clarity to say that, but we have it in different ways. Like artistic people that are like art, they know what they're passionate about, right? So that's how I see the human skills coming into play, and the importance of what you said, having that toolkit. Another way that I like to see it is having the space to explore that, to get to know themselves, right?
And I'm curious, based on your experience, your perspective, like why is it so hard for some folks to have that clarity, to find that clarity?
Oh, in my perspective, there's different factors, right? As human beings, um, it all depends on different factors. For one is the environment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Like if take a child that grows up in a family that comes from a small town, is Catholic, and I'm using that just because that's how I grew up. So nothing against the Catholics. I love you all. Nothing against that. I'll use me. I'll just say it. I grew up in a small village in Mexico, um, very Catholic focused, and I went to a girls only school, right? And there were certain expectations. I remember when I would go to school, the nuns would tell me, we're going to do this, we're going to learn how to knit so that when you have a baby, you can make sweaters and blankets for your baby.
Hmm.
Or we're going to learn how to make this dish so that when you have a husband, you can cook.
Hmm.
So growing up, that's normal. That's like, okay, well, that's what I'm here to do. So when I got older and I wanted to have children and I couldn't, my body wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started struggling with having that clarity of what do I want? Do I want a child because I want to be a mother, or is it because that's expected of me?
Right.
And that's like a really big example, and to some people it would be like heavy, but it's a real example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one that I experienced myself. Whereas I see other people in my journeys that I've met who grew up more in a, you would call it hippie family, that it's like you just go out in nature, you're always barefoot, you're free to do whatever you want. And if they don't have a baby or they're struggling, they don't see it as this is horrible, I'm a failure, who am I, what am I? They see it more like, well, that's nature, that's life, I can still do it in this other way, I can still be nurturing. And so for some people, depending on the environment, this is where we go to the nurture nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel like those are key factors that play in that some of us find it easier. And then that's just the basis. Because then we talk about experiences that we have throughout life,
Mm-hmm.
and the support that we have to help us through those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we don't really know our clients or our customers or our audience. So I feel like for some people, it's more challenging because it's scary. And one of the things I play with a lot is, as humans, we have the tendency of living, responding, seeing life through either love or fear. Not love like romantic love only, but like passionate, like what your purpose is, something you really like, something that you're like, oh, I really love that. Or something that's really freaking scary.
Mm.
Right. And to make those decisions and to have those clarities, it's important to have the right environment. I'm not saying it's set in any one way.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. It's more like having that awareness, especially when we're old enough to make that awareness, then we can say, whoa, this isn't helpful for me.
Right.
Right. That's how I see it. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, there's that wrestling of the nature and nurture aspect. But to me, there's also a third aspect, which I'm not sure if I can come up with a name for it on the spot, but it's something to the effect of like intentionality or choice, right? Because yes, you might be in that environment, but at some point you decided, well, I'm going to do something different, right? Because naturally you probably wanted the world, the bridal salon and all that sort of stuff. But the environment said, no, just stay home and cook and knit and all that. But then you decided, okay, which one do I gravitate towards, and making the choice. So it's almost like a third of each, where yes, nature, because you're predisposed as an introvert, as a whatever label that you give yourself. And then the environment shapes you too. But then it's your choices ongoing that really determine what multiplies the either one of the two, right? So if you have that strong enough intent to kind of go against the grain and say, okay, like, well, this is what's expected, but I'm going to choose the path less traveled. Well, then you do that. But if that intent is not there, then you just kind of roll with the sheep and
Yeah.
follow the herd and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's all of those aspects. For me, a lot of that clarity comes from, or the lack of clarity comes from kind of that environment, that systemic piece as well, where depending on where you were born, to whom you were born, right? Because you often don't get to choose your parents, you get to choose your friends and stuff like that. But if you were born to, let's say, a hippie family, your life could have been quite different, right? Because the environment would have changed you and shaped you. Would have been exactly the same? Could be, right? Could have been maybe you rebelled and went totally back and conformed to everything. It could
Yeah.
have been that too. But yeah, I think for me, a lot of folks struggle because there is a bit of it's a systemic thing, right? School teaches you to sit, do as you're told, follow, color in the lines,
Stop daydreaming. You'll get
stop
in
daydreaming.
trouble.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. They teach you to be a very good employee, right? Now there are some programs that are starting to nurture entrepreneurs and things like that. But it's one of those things where again, society they don't tend to um, I think that like starting your own small business, like a bridal salon, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
course, if you're that unicorn startup founder, people love that because you make $1 bajillion. But if you're instead of making whatever $100,000 an accountant, making $100,000 owning a bridal studio, like that's not good. That's not one that people often tout as like, oh yeah, you should go for that. Like yeah, spend tens of thousands of dollars and multiple years of your education to do that, right? Yeah. So to go back to the clarity, it's as you said, multifaceted. A bit of
Yeah.
nature, a bit of nurture, and a sprinkling of intentionality, right? And the good thing is that intentionality, that choice can be, call it awoken, and people can be, let's say, unplugged from the matrix and realize the choice really is yours,
Yeah.
right? And whether or not there are consequences to those choices, right? Because sometimes the environment makes that choice really difficult and challenging, and sometimes the environment makes that choice quite easy, right? So that's kind of the thoughts that I had.
Yeah, it is. And it's really about, free will. At the end of the day, it's like you said, it's a choice, and it can be, like you said, awaken, or for others I prefer other words, activated. We just have to
Activate.
activate that,
Yeah.
Um because yes, it's almost like, it feels like, and some people have been playing around. I try to avoid going from to one extreme or another.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, I know there's some people out there that have these conversations about we're in the matrix and we're in a game and we're just like, which, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then I don't go too far out because I still want to stay in a neutral place where I get to choose. Because
Mm.
if we start believing too much of anything, it becomes kind of unhelpful. And we know this even from the way we eat. If we start eating too much of anything,
Mm.
we need a mix of, like you said, kind of like a recipe of sprinkle this and sprinkle that, and make it nice and yummy and good for everyone. The sprinkles are going to be different and the amounts are going to be different, but in essence, I see life as an invitation to really live it to the fullest and explore it
Mm.
as best as we can. And for that, it helps that each individual has that commitment to, I am going to live life as best as I can, despite
Mhm.
of, in spite of, even if. And to your point, yeah, when I was 21, I got married. I got divorced at 24 because the first husband I had was extremely abusive.
Mm.
And I stayed there 3 years. And I literally tell the story when people ask me, how did you leave? I tell the story not from a place of, oh, give me some sympathy, look for me. No, there is no poor me. Um, I share the story because the reason why I left was because I chose to change my mind.
Mm.
I decided, yes, maybe marriage is hard. Yes, maybe marriage is tough. Yes, maybe it's challenging and difficult. And yes, maybe to some people, divorce is bad. That's not for me. I decided that for me, marriage meant something else. For me, being divorced did not mean I was a failure. I had to reprogram every belief that I had that had been installed. If we look at, I love using the IT metaphor thing of this is a program, this is a system, and we upload and, install things, and we need to, in my opinion, upgrade it like our systems, like our operating systems. 100%. So I had to choose. Well, one, I had to be aware what is happening. Kind of like when we open our computer and it gets glitchy. It's like, okay, well, where is it getting glitchy? And become aware and then accept it. Yes, there's something wrong with it. Or there's something off about it. Yeah. And then I decided, like you said, consequences. These are going to have consequences. If I choose to get divorced, potentially, because we first create stories in our head, right? We make assumptions. Yep. My biggest assumption was my whole family is going to hate me. They're going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be a failure. Then it's society is going to criticize me. They're going to make fun of me and be like, oh, see, we told you shouldn't have gotten married. That was stupid. Right. And then the other thing was I'm going to be labeled the stupid girl that got divorced. And now I'm like this divorce, say whatever the word is. And I'm only 24, or 21 when it started. So, and then making another assessment of, well, what is the price of me staying here? What is at risk? And for me, it was like, well, my life. Like I could literally die here. Like I'm already dying alive, but I could literally really die. And then, like you said, and what we just talked about, then comes in the factor of, well, what do you want to do? And all of those things that I just mentioned for me are the soft skills, the human skills. What do we want to do? And whatever we choose to do is okay. For sure. What I always tell people is as long as we make an informed yes or an informed no, it's going to feel good. It's when we're saying yes, kind of, or no, I don't think so. That's when it feels yucky and gross and heavy. But I know that when I say yes, even though people may not understand my yes, but I understand my yes, I'm going to be good with it. Even if down the line, I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to say no. This is enough of that one. Let's go this way. Which is what you said earlier. It's okay to change our minds. So when you were sharing, that third intention factor, I was thinking, yeah, totally. I see it. I feel it. I see it even in teams, how it works when we're working on a project. I see it in people when they're living their life, when they're trying to make big decisions. And I feel like the one thing that's missing is the activation or the reminder to each individual that they have a choice. People forget that because of what you just said, because they're being trained that teachers will tell you what to do, parents will tell you what to do, professors will tell you what to do, your advisors will tell you what to do about your career. Whereas now
your boss, your future manager will
then you get in a relationship, now your significant other is telling you what to do. Whereas in reality, we have the choice, we have an option to choose for ourselves. And it gets tricky, right? Because now we have all these connections that we don't want to disappoint, we don't want to hurt, we don't want to, but in the process, we're hurting ourselves. And what I wanted to clarify is when I said, advisors or career people, that was in the past, my experience, but I'm grateful that nowadays more and more people are showing up to really empower the individual, remind them, you can choose. What do you want? It's uncomfortable at first, but eventually they'll feel safe enough to say what you just used as an example earlier. I just want to be a mechanic.
Yeah. And part of that conversation often goes to the, just follow your passion, do what you love, and all that sort of stuff. I'd love for your perspective on that, because I have my own view on whether that's great advice, sound advice, or just something that you have to be aware of and possibly steer away from. So what are your thoughts on kind of that typical, it's like, You love being a mechanic? Why not be a mechanic?
Well, it
Or whatever it is.
depends. It depends on where the person is, right?
Sure.
And that's why, I tell people, if you really want sound advice, don't go to a friend.
Mm.
And that may sound harsh, and that's okay. That's just my perspective. We don't all have to agree with it. Because friends will tend to generally want to solve a problem.
Mm.
Because there's been studies done that one of the things that brings human happiness is solving problems.
Okay.
It makes us happy. So people will want to jump right away to solve a problem. For example, you go to a friend and you tell them, man, I had a bad day at work today. It was rough. My boss said, quit the job, man. It's like, okay, calm down. We don't need to go from a bad day to quit the job. Let's tone it down. Kind of like people that are saying, well, my parents are forcing me to be an engineer, but all I really want to do is be a car mechanic. Mm-hmm. Do it. Follow your purpose. It's like, okay, well, let's tone it down. Why is that person saying that? What kind of relationship do they have with their parent?
Yeah.
Are they speaking out of being a rebel and saying, well, now I'm not going to do it? Have they actually taken time to explore who they are and what they want? Or is it saying that out of confusion? So the person giving that advice, that's why as a life coach, I always tell people, I don't give people advice.
Right.
Like at all. I keep asking them questions for them to come up with what feels good for them. Mm-hmm. But I would say no. When people are going around saying, oh, just follow your heart, do your thing. You want to be a unicorn trainer, go do it. It's like, okay, dude, like, where are the unicorns, first of all? Yeah. Unless nowadays we have people that identify as a unicorn, then yeah, go train those. But see, even there, we're going like really, if we really want to do something, you're going to figure out a way to do it anyway. So it's important, in my opinion, we have a responsibility as human beings in this collective to support each other in a good way. And saying something just because, in my opinion, it's not in a good way. Mm-hmm. So it's, for example, there's a lot of, nowadays there's a lot of little communities and tribes and, all these people doing their thing. And if you see that the person leading that community is disrespectful, is, their language is not kind, but they preach about kindness. It's like, why would you want to tell this person, yeah, keep working on your mission? It's like, why? If your mission and your actions are not actually in alignment, right? They're not contributing in a good way. So it's the same with someone. If someone comes and says, well, I just want to be a mechanic and I'm just going to do it. And you're like, yeah, totally go do it. But maybe this person hasn't, I'm not saying that that's what they will do, but if this person really just wants to go hang out every weekend at a club, drink, chill, and they're thinking that's probably the easy way, if that's the reason why they want to do that, as opposed to being a doctor, then again, there's no judgment. It's more like just being aware of where is that coming from. Again, intention, right? Mm-hmm. That's how I see it. Yep. What do you think?
Yeah, I would focus on getting to understand the individual, again, that purpose and why that is the right decision for them. But often when I have those types of conversations, like the typical like Steve Jobs commencement speech comes up where it's like, do what you love and like never work a day in your life, that sort of thing, right? But one thing that I actually point out, actually for that specific speech, is he never actually says, do what you love. He actually says, love what you do, which is a very subtle twist because we talked a little bit about language.
Yeah.
It's a very small shift, but actually it's the perspective. Well, my perspective is that whatever you do, there's going to be stuff that you like about it and stuff that you don't, right? And both options are always available to you, right? So even if you are a unicorn trainer, right, you're going to have to pick up the crap after.
Yeah, do that. They still crap.
Yeah. So now, is that 90% of the job or is that 10% of the job? Is it 80, 20, 60, 40, 70, 30, 50, 50, or on the other side, right? So with every job, there's stuff that you're going to enjoy and stuff that you're not going to enjoy. Now, if you focus on the stuff you enjoy, the job just becomes more enjoyable. And going back to that choice piece, if you make the choice and focus on the stuff that is horrible and annoying and all that sort of stuff, guess what the job is going to be? It's going to be the worst, that where I want to quit and not work for this person because they're so horrible and whatever. But if you focus on what is good and what you love about it, that can kind of change your whole outlook on things. So, and that's probably the perspective that I'd have folks consider, right? In their particular situation, it might be the 90-10, where 90% of it is horrible, and they have to hang on to this 10% that gets them through. And maybe that just gets them through long enough so that they can find a new role, right? Where it's 80-20, where it's 60-40, where it's whatever, so they can improve their life situation. But to automatically like quit because you hate it, sometimes it's just the universe testing you too,
Yeah.
to see how committed you are. Where, well, can you go through this suffering, right? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be stuff that you don't enjoy, and if you're always moving to I'll be happy when, I'll be happy if, and then you get that thing and you're still not happy, well, there's probably something else that needs to be dealt with. So that's kind of the perspective that I would take, is one, kind of getting to know the person, understanding their real motivations behind it, their intentionality, and then going back to saying like, well, maybe it's just a small perspective shift. Where can you change your focus, change your choices, and things might magically be more positive, be more optimistic along the way. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
No, I love what you just said too. Like, and this is why I love having these conversations, because I hear what you're saying, and then I hear myself what I'm saying, and I'm like, oh, how do they come together? How do they differ? How are they similar? And at the end of the day, it's like it's like complementary, right? So even when you were saying perspective, this is why it's so important for me to have these spaces to share the perspective. And even though I have my perspective and you have yours, when we share it, there's like a third perspective that's born just to this conversation. And then whoever's listening to this will have their own perspective. And then we have a fourth perspective, and so on and so forth. And it's a beautiful play or a beautiful game in life, right? But to your point, yes, I agree with, especially, with the younger generation and where they're at, or even if you're older and you're reflective, you're listening and you're like, man, should I quit this job? Should I do this? Should I go and start my business? Should I? Before we do any of that, or before you make those decisions, really sit with it and reflect and be open to what might you discover. What might you learn about yourself, first of all, because it's all about perspective, really. Like, if we use this example of this person that wants to be a mechanic, and in my example, I say, well, maybe they want to be a mechanic because they see it more like a 9-to-5 job. They can do that, and then they can go party with their friends on the weekends, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, but if they were to be a doctor, maybe they wouldn't be able to go party with their friends every weekend, but the purpose is really to work with their hands. So maybe they're a surgeon. They're still piecing things together. So what is the why? And we hear this about everywhere. Like, what's your why? Get to know your why. And I feel sometimes it's sad because it becomes so trendy that people just gonna get on the bus of the why without actually understanding the why. But they feel cool because they're on the cool, trendy why bus.
Why bus, yeah.
And then they miss the whole why. And then there's another trend over here, like, oh, let them. Now let's jump on the let them bus. But you didn't even get the clarity of the why. But now you're moving on to let them. And I'm just using these examples because, every now and then we hear them, right? This book came out, or this person's out there, and, this video went viral, and social media is here. And now everybody's trying to just keep up with what's the next best thing and what am I supposed to focus on? Who am I supposed to listen? Who should I follow? When in reality, it's like, how about you? Start with you.
Yeah.
I always quote I know some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. I always quote Michael Jackson: "Start with the man in the mirror. Start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like your why. Yeah, you want to go train unicorns, okay, but why? Like you said, you'll find the unicorns because you just have to define what a unicorn is and then go get it.
Yeah.
But why? And like you said in your very valid example, you're still going to have to pick up the crap if that's what you're training, whether it's, like real crap or the crap that they carry.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And what I'm getting with all of this is it boils down to having those awareness. I feel like the foundation of these skills is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reflecting on that earlier today. I made a note about it. Awareness and being aware that every decision we make, there's a responsibility with it.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for us, but the ripple effect out there for our families, for the community, for nature, for everything that we do. If we decide to follow a path or a career that it's going to make us miserable, and now we start drinking and we don't go out and we're just drunk, littering out in the forest, well, we're impacting so many areas of life in a poor way, not to mention our health.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is a part where everything and nothing kicks in. I expanded really, really out because we are part of everything. We are part of nothing.
Yeah.
And even though it may seem exhausting, like, oh, do I really need to decide what I want to do now? Do I really need to make this commitment? I always bring it down to, before we start going out, to what am I going to commit for the rest of my life in terms of a trade or a job? Why don't we start committing to ourselves first? And that commitment is to be the best that we can every day. And what's going to help us do that? To really enjoy life. Because who knows how long we're going to live, really.
Yeah.
Right. And then the interactions we have with other people, like you. I mean, you get to interact with young people, young professionals. Like, that's a huge honor, gift, privilege. I don't know what the right word is.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. And it's a big responsibility. But whatever we do carries responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So these soft skills that people call them are so important. And I wonder where that came from, to call them soft skills. I think I know where, but
it's actually from an army term, where the hard skills were the ones where you dealt with kind of machinery, fixing all the weapons and all the engineering stuff, and everything else was considered a soft skill, because like you weren't dealing with like the mechanics or the actual physical hard stuff. But yeah, and it's at a bit of a detriment because they're not soft, right? This is integral, where and that's kind of why I have my platform, where I wish they were teaching all of these things in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of a course on geography or history or whatever, and they're important in their own regard.
Well, we're not even going to open that can of worms, because that even depends on who's teaching it, what they're teaching, and what they're saying. Because if it's all
100%.
lies, then it's a waste of time. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Again. But yes, I hear where you're going.
But if you had a course on like even managing your, imagine a course called awareness.
Yeah.
A course called choice.
Yeah.
Right. Those types of things, where those are core skills. And then it gets into things like time management, gets into things like even like learning to learn, and those types of skills, social skills, right? The introvert, extrovert, all that sort of stuff, like understanding your own tendencies and how to work with other people with different tendencies. Those types of things, if those were core courses.
Like even understanding your body.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because don't get me started on that whole like physical fitness stuff, where it's like, no offense to trainers. I know amazing physical trainers, like gym trainers that I've worked with, that are very like, okay, let's get to know your body and see what your body needs. as opposed to the ones that are like, this is what you need to eat, this is how much you're going to work out. And I'm like, yo, you don't even know my body. Oh,
Yeah.
I know bodies. I'm like, no, you don't. Right. So that's, for example, an extreme of one and, and the other. And for people to really understand themselves, like how to even be in stillness enough to trust your own guidance, especially right now with social media. I mean, dang,
Mhm.
the social media thing, it's like if we're not careful,
Yeah.
it's gross.
Yeah.
And I see it's a good thing. Like I said, if it's taken to an extreme of like ill intention, it can be really painful.
Mhm.
If you take it to an extreme of too good, then it becomes addictive in another way. But it's having that balance. Because people are trying to figure out, like every time I go through, when I do my posts, I scan through it from time to time just to see what's out there, and it's like so many videos about how to get in shape, the different kind of workouts, and I think my algorithm's trying to figure out which one is going to catch my attention because I just keep ignoring them all. But I keep seeing a big selection, and I feel like that's so stressful.
Mhm.
We're not meant to have that much options. It's like going to a buffet.
Right.
Like it's confusing. It's overwhelming to the system. Now we're talking about the nervous system, but if we go to the basic, awareness, trust in yourself, even like nature,
Mhm.
that would be a good course. Go sit outside.
Yeah.
See what happens. Notice what happens to your body. Notice what happens to everything around you.
Yeah. I still think that's part of the awareness course. But one component module assignment is you sit in nature and be aware of nature because it's amazing, right? Even on a rainy day, on a sunny
Oh
day,
yeah.
whatever day, right? Like
And if we live in Canada, we have them all in like a week.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're coming close to it feels like we're coming close to a really good, you know, circle. So we
Mm.
started talking about what you like to do, what you are choosing to focus on, the human skills. We talked about your name. You even talked about your first name, which is funny because my first name is a combination of two as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then we started really talking about what makes it tricky for people to make decisions or to have clarity. These things are important. And the more we continue the conversation, we really got to the point of these human skills are important because it support us to have clarity, to have more presence, to have more awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and to add a sprinkle to enjoy life. Life
Mm-hmm.
is meant to be enjoyed. It's
Mm-hmm.
designed to be experienced and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave really good examples. I love your color coded calendar. So if anyone's out there, if you're an introvert, an extrovert, and you really want to manage that energy better, that's a really great tool. So thanks for sharing that one. But what I'm mostly curious about is if anyone's listening that feels like they could benefit from a conversation with you, some guidance, just a reflection. What's the best way to reach you? And do you offer anything like a chemistry call, or you said you have a YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel where you share things? So anything you want to share that people that are listening to this are like, oh, I want to know more about this person over there. How?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the best place is probably LinkedIn. I'm most active there, posting, and so feel free to connect with me and make sure to connect instead of follow, because I know a lot of people will follow. The main difference between the two is following, you see my posts, but connecting, we can actually message and have a conversation. So I would appreciate that. Also, if you like the information here, you can explore more on YouTube. So I'm under Focus Inspired is the name of the organization I created. So you can find more, and it's basically what you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. So I have a podcast with other guests that I've had, similar type of conversations, more learning about their swike, because everyone has their own. And I encourage you to kind of reflect and think of your own that you could share to the world as well. Yeah. And I guess the newest thing I mentioned, I think before we were recording that I'm vibe coding a new app, right? So that app is CareerBuddy. It's your mentor in your pocket, so you can try it out. And it's still got a few bugs in it, but it's got a lot of great information, and it's kind of like working with me, but in app form, right?
Nice.
And yeah, have a conversation if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or group coaching. And really, I think you summed it up where it really starts by cultivating that awareness. And then once you have that awareness, everything else gets built on top, whatever sort of human skills you need to develop in yourself. And it really is just an exercise in self-awareness at the end of the day, because there's no one size fits all solution. It's a sprinkling of this, a smattering of that, and a dollop of this that makes it right for you, versus someone else. It's going to be a different combination of things because they want something else. Right. So yeah, I'm first of all, well, last of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to share and have this wonderful conversation. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a lot of folks that connect and can continue the conversation online.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, like you said, there's no one size fits all, especially because we're constantly adapting and changing. Mm-hmm. So even what fits right now may not be what fits later. That's why we have jobs, because some clients will come work with us, they go off, and then later they're like, oh, something feels off, and it's like, okay, let's reassess what changed, what shifted, right? Yeah. So that's the beauty. When we look at seasons, we're constantly in motion and changing. So that's amazing. Well, Luki, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for choosing to spend some time and share perspectives here with me today. Thank you for even choosing to say, yes, let's see who she is and what she's about. And just thank you for being you. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And yeah, I hope this is not the last one. I don't think it is. And just thank you for doing what you do. We need it more and more now, more than ever.
Yeah, and I would echo that sentiment for yourself. So yeah, keep doing what you do as well. And yeah, there'll be more conversations along the way. So
because I'm like, oh, this was really cool. I like how you ask me questions in between, because it gets me also going, and it's like that's a true conversation. For me, that's like a true open conversation. Yeah. So I love this. So thank you once again. And thank you all of you listening. All of the links and information on staying in touch with Luki, I'll put it on the description, both on YouTube and on Spotify and all the other platforms. And yeah, always reach out. Here we go. Another person that is open to conversations and perspectives. So why not take advantage of this? Why not continue to connect so we can expand and continue to be better and live life to its fullest? Mm-hmm. How amazing is that? So with that, I wish you all an amazing, amazing rest of your time whenever you're listening, wherever you're listening. And yeah, until next time, talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.